So whenever we undertake any type of scientific project, we use tools to engage with whatever object we're trying to study, right? So for example, if I want to study this book that's in front of me, William Friedrich Hegel's The Phenomenology of Spirit, I could bring a tool like a measuring stick, and measure the various dimensions, the length, the width, the height, and I could tell you what the volume of this book is and, tell you a bunch of information about the book, the thickness of each page. I could tell you a lot about the book using this tool. However, is this tool that I'm using, in this case the meter stick, part of the scientific study? Is it part of the information that I am getting? What is it, part of the knowledge that I am gaining of this book? And to answer that question, we actually need to step back a bit. Whenever we undertake a scientific project, there are some underlying assumptions or structures or standards that we already set before we engage in the project. So, what does that mean? In the particular case of the meter stick in the book, I'm already predetermining that the knowledge that I will get from this book is knowledge about this thing called length and volume, which is already contained within the tool that I'm using, the meter stick, right? So I'm bringing this tool to then engage. I'm not using a weight scale or a microscope or something to understand this book. I'm using a meter stick, right? I'm not using, for example, my brain to understand the text and information that's in the book, to process it and gain some meaning out of it or something. I'm using the meter stick, which presupposes, in a sense, what information I'm going to get out of it. So what Hegel would say is that to understand the whole picture of the book, I need to include the tools I use to understand it in this. I need to do an analysis of the standards and of the tools that I use to engage. You can't, the whole of the book isn't only contained right there. I can't just point at it. I'm also engaged with it using a tool, using, let's say, my consciousness, or a measuring stick, or a scale if I'm trying to get the weight of the book, or some other chemical tools if I want to study the chemical composition of the book, right? So to understand the whole is much, much more complicated than just using tools to understand it, or than just looking at a particular part of it standalone, or at looking at all of the various parts of it at the same time. There is so much more we need to do. And that's what Hegel tries to do, or attempts to do, in the Phenomenology of Spirit, which I'm about halfway through now, and seems to me is truly one of the most influential texts in Western philosophy. Now, some context on what all this is. A few friends of mine and I are planning on the 27th of August, Hegel's birthday, to do a 24-hour live stream completing the system of German idealism. That's it. After this, it's over. Philosophy's done. We can move on to doing more interesting stuff. But some context, we're not really, none of us are really professionally trained, we're just sort of doing this. We're a group of friends trying to have fun. And so, I'm a bit less than halfway through, and my impression so far is that, Hegel is the last true philosopher, and everybody who wrote any philosophy after him, at least in the West, are writing commentaries on Hegel. If you want to hear more on that, stay tuned for the live stream on the 27th of August. Come through if you're interested. But yeah, so Hegel tries to paint a picture of the whole, of it in its entirety. He's out there to do all of philosophy. That's it. Here we're a science of the experience of consciousness, and then from there on going on to everything. So he's trying to sort of do a science, like he calls it he's or he says what he's trying to do is like engage in sort of like this very procedural and methodological way of engaging with philosophy, setting sort of setting this standard that I was talking about earlier, or not setting it, but rather setting it and studying it, really, like really looking into it, looking into the parts of them whenever we talk about any particular thing. You know, what is it that we're talking about, and what is it that is looking and studying this object, and how to incorporate that into the understanding of the object itself. So, I know a lot of this seems up in the air. This is sort of like a little tease of what's to come. If this seems interesting to you, you know, come through. 27th of August. Let's go.